You're watching an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company.
What's up, Mob Associates? Joey Naples here, Johnny Chechitelli. We're back for another exciting episode of Youngstown Mob Talk. Good to be back, Johnny.
Absolutely.
So we've talked a little bit about Mark Batcho, right?
Yes.
And you've kind of had grown a relationship with him, going in, visiting him in prison and corresponding with him back and forth. And many know that he was considered one of the last, I guess, hitmen of Youngstown, right?
That's right.
The Youngstown Mob heyday
in the 1990s. Yeah.
He was responsible for shooting Paul Gaines. He was also responsible for shooting Gary Van Brocklin.
Yep. Two former prosecutors there.
And he killed Larry Susany.
Yep. Larry Susany, the Tomato Man, or the King of Sleaze, as they called him. He was the co-owner in the Palace in the Pines with Frankie Susany. And yeah, Mark took him out.
And one of the things, so, like we said, we talked about him being like one of the last hitmen, but he was also brought up in your Crooked City podcast, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's actually where I met Mark. So when we were producing Crooked City, I had reached out to Mark via, mail. He sent him a letter and an email and all that. And it was interesting that he'd been in prison at that point for 25 years or so. And he said that I was like the first person, so this is the first stranger, I guess, from the outside to reach out to him and make contact after all that time. He was real close with his mother. She was a great woman, Rose Amadori. I got to meet her and become friends with her. Actually, grew pretty close to Rose. She passed away recently, but she was, a really good person. And she kind of showed that, Mark, yeah, he's a hitman. He did some terrible things, murder, shootings, violence, drugs, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he's still somebody's son.
Right.
Still a human being, right? It's interesting. I've, I think I have a good relationship with Paul Gaines, the former Mahoning County prosecutor, longtime prosecutor, who survived that assassination attempt on Christmas Eve, 1996. And I've also got a good relationship with Mark. So it's kind of an interesting world
dynamic there.
But for Crooked City, I would go down the Crooked City podcast. If you haven't seen it, check it out anywhere you get podcasts. I went down to the prison in Trumbull County where Mark was at the time, and we actually did our interviews in person. So I went down there with the mic, with all that, and another producer from Crooked City, and we recorded several interviews with Mark. He was very open, very honest. He brought a different side. People who listened to Crooked City were actually pretty surprised.
Yeah.
Because, he comes off, he's funny and charming almost in some of those interviews. And people, if all you have read about Mark was the horrible things that he's done, in the newspaper or whatever, you'd have this idea in your head.
Exactly.
Right? And so it was interesting to meet somebody like that in person.
Well, we see that with a lot of these guys, right, that are in that life. They're very charming, very charismatic.
Yeah.
But then they have that other side to them.
That's true. That's true. And Mark always wanted to be in the mob. Right. That was his life goal. Whereas mine, I wanted to be a filmmaker and go off and make movies. Mark wanted to be in the mob. That was his goal.
Right.
And so he would do anything it took to do that. And unfortunately, that led him to be used by some of these guys.
Yeah.
And to do things that other guys wouldn't do.
Right.
He once told me that somebody once asked him in prison, a young kid knew who he was or found out who he was, and he asked Mark, how would I get, how do you get to be in the mafia? How do you get to be in the mob?
Right.
And Mark said, one of the easiest answers there is you have to do or be willing to do something that they're not willing to do themselves.
Right.
And in Mark's case, that was, a lot of violence.
Yeah.
So, I got to meet Mark. Check out one of our previous episodes on Youngstown Mob Talk called Walking Through a Murder. I explain all about how Mark walked me through how and why he killed Larry Susany, the Tomato Man, they called him, or the King of Sleaze. He had another nickname. But why Larry Susany was killed, Mark walked me through that. So that's another episode on our YouTube channel. Check that out. But for this episode, we're gonna hear about Mark Batcho more from somebody who knew him very closely.
Well, yeah, let's talk about this other character from Crooked City that we're going to talk about today, right? We're talking about, of course, none other than Frank Susany.
That's right.
Right. Many out there from the Valley know who Frank is, right? Yeah. He's the good guy, as he calls himself in his Facebook post.
That's right. Always drinking that iced tea.
Yep, the iced tea. Iced tea for the good guy. So let's talk a little bit about Frank, and for those out there that maybe don't know who he is,
sure.
Kind of give us a rundown of your.
Yeah. So Frankie Susany is I guess the easiest way you could say is he was a burglar. Right. He was part of a burglary crew, out of Youngstown. And Youngstown, if you're not familiar with a lot of the kind of gangsters and mobsters and of lore over the decades, going way, way back, has always been populated with some master burglars.
Yeah.
Right. I don't care if you're talking about Emil Denzio or, even Junior Cenzarino back in the day and Sam Faseska, guys like that. These guys were the top notch of what they did. And these guys were burglars. They would go and, do major scores around the country. Really, like I said, even before Frank's day, decades before, there were guys doing in burglary crews in Youngstown. So
yeah, Frank, you had matter of fact, and you talking, I know you mentioned some of them older guys. You mentioned Junior Cenzarino and guys like that. Even Pinto was one of those guys. We have FBI documents where from what they say, he came up through with the Carabbias originally, and he had partnered with some of those guys like Junior Cenzarino. And they would go on these big heists, even guys from Cleveland and stuff like that.
Yeah, when you read these old files, it's legendary. There's stuff that's really in movies, made for movies. Stuff you only see in movies. These guys were doing it. These guys really were, of that ilk, and all the way through the 90s.
Right. I mean, these guys would go out of town and rob jewelry, jewelry stores that had, $100,000-$200,000 worth of jewelry in there.
That's right.
And, places they'd take it, Vegas, California, they bring it back here and, fence it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, Youngstown's always had those prolific burglary guys, right?
And successful.
Yeah.
For so long, so, and like I said, it's the kind of stuff people are always enamored by heist movies,
right?
The bank robbery movies, that kind of thing. These guys were doing, department stores, wholesale clubs, jewelry stores, anywhere with a safe. These guys were professionals, professional burglars, and really, maybe the best of what they did in the whole country. So, ask any FBI agent. Youngstown kind of has that reputation. So another voice, Frankie Susany, is a major voice in the Crooked City podcast. That podcast details how he and Mark actually started as enemies and became great friends. Mark famously stabbed Frankie in the face over a girl.
Yeah.
And, according to Mark.
Right.
And so, Frankie was severely injured there, still has scars. But they ended up becoming friends, and it, in one of those stranger than fiction kind of ways.
Only in Youngstown.
Yeah, these guys ended up becoming very close. And so after the Crooked City podcast came out, Jim and I started this show, Youngstown Mob Talk, and eventually we started doing live shows. We were approached to do a live show at the Robbins Theater in Warren, and it was a great show. It was a sellout crowd. It was fantastic. Well, we asked Frankie if he'd be a guest on our first show, our live show,
right?
And of course, he was going out of town, and who knows, it was a vacation or a job, I don't know.
Right.
But he was not available, but he did a recorded interview with us. And, he says that, one of the reasons he really agreed to do it on camera with us was he wanted to tell a different side of Mark's story, Mark Batcho. You can tell Frank still really does care for Mark.
Absolutely.
you know, as a good friend, and he wanted to, you know, paint that picture of Mark that people don't know, right? The human side of him.
Yeah.
So, you know, we showed that on that live show back in 2023,
Yep.
and it's kind of been sitting in the vault since then.
Yeah.
So, you know, we decided we've had a lot of people who weren't able to make that show, who read about it or heard about it, reach out to us and say, "Hey, are you going to ever put out that interview with Frankie Susany?" So, you know, right now that's the episode you're watching, you're listening to. And again, if you are listening to us on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, check us out on YouTube for video. And if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like and please subscribe to the channel. Really helps us grow and do more of these Youngstown Mob Talks. But what you're about to hear is an interview we recorded with Frankie Susany back in 2023. And this was, again, you know, he talks a lot about his good friend, Mark Batcho. He has some other cool stories in there too. You know, of course, if you're not familiar with our show, Jim's great uncle, Joey Naples, was the boss of Youngstown at one time, the Youngstown Mob, before he was assassinated. And Frankie was in his crew. He was a member of that crew at that time.
Yep.
And it's pretty interesting to hear, you know, he talks about some inside discussions.
Yeah.
You know,
About what happened after Joey was killed and
yeah.
kind of what went on. You know, because a lot of people always kind of asked, you know, how come nobody ever did anything? And Frank might be able to give you a few answers on that.
Yeah, so stay tuned to that and, you know, check that out. He also has you know, he ends it with a pretty funny story too about Orly Carabbia. So I won't spoil that. We'll let him tell it himself. But check this out. It's our, you know, interview that we did for our live show with Frankie Susany.
Tell me your name. Who are you?
Frankie Susany.
And how would anybody know you in this town?
Well, if you knew me, I've been around a long time. I was always very sociable. I was involved in crooked stuff. And I've always had businesses. But I've always been sociable, so a lot of people know me just from having a good time and talking and hanging out, the nightlife and that. I am here to talk about Mark Batcho. Not so much about what he did shooting, you know. Mark was always there to do that. I could tell you times when one time I told him, hey, we got to go do this, go get a rifle and a shotgun. He was back in 3 hours, didn't ask why or what, you know, why are we doing this? We just went. So he was very loyal to me, extremely loyal. Probably to a fault, because as he tells in the story, he was mesmerized. And that was probably his downfall, because that mesmerizing let him get used by Bernie mainly, Bernie the Jew. Not Lenny, because Lenny was way in the background. Ernie liked Mark.
Ernie being Dylan.
Yes, Ernie liked Mark. Ernie wouldn't have used him. If Ernie was going to use him, he would have used him and stayed loyal to Mark. Where Bernie was just using him to use. Bernie about this, actually. A pretty heated argument. So probably Mark, because he was mesmerized with mafia, organized crime, that's what let him get used like that. He got led down this path. I took Mark under my wing as other people wanted to use him, as Bernie and them wanted to use him. I saw him as, oh, here's a loyal guy that isn't afraid of jail. I'll make him into a burglar. Because all me and Sam Faseska need are guys to help us to carry stuff, look out, and that's it. And do what we said. That's it. We didn't need anything else. We knew the alarms, the safes, the vaults, everything. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to make him into a burglar. I'm going to take him with us, you know? So that's how he started coming with us. And I even made him, I took him to like some stores and I made him buy normal clothes, no sweatpants and jogging outfits, silk jogging outfits. I made him wear normal clothes, normal shirts, so he looked like everybody else out there.
Yeah.
So, and his wife loved it. His wife loved it that I made him, I didn't let him swear, because I never swear. I told him quit swearing. I'd always correct him when he swears. I made him dress normal, made him go buy normal clothes. I used to always say to him, hey, you got to get normal. You got to get normal. And his wife still says it to this day whenever I talk to her. He says, he got to get normal when he comes home, you know, so.
Yeah.
So I didn't use him. I kind of took him down, okay, what not everyone would think is, okay, you took him down the path of being a crook and going on scores, but that was a lot better than what he was doing.
You were more like a big brother.
Yeah, no drugs, no getting drunk, no swearing, dress normal, be nice to people. Now, other than that, we're going to do some things here. We're going to do some things, and we're not going to let anybody do this. And, you know, so I kind of took him down a path where he could make a lot of money and buy a home and this and live a good life.
So what happened? Did you get jammed up and then you were out of the picture?
I can't remember all the exact months, but when he killed when he shot Paul Gaines, I was there, and he did it behind my back, and Van Brocklin. When he killed Sisman, I was in jail, so I wasn't around for that, you know. And from what people told me, he was using drugs again. He was drinking. He was, you know, a mess again.
Yeah.
So the Gaines thing, I would have been totally against. Again, that was the end round. See, we worried about him when Joey got killed. There were groups of us, say me, Pino, Frankie, well, really Frankie wasn't, Ernie, me, Pino, Ernie, Sam. Say us four, maybe Jim Quinn. We talked about, should we go kill her, Lenny? If we do him, who else should we do? Because we had conversations. We said, well, what about Bernie? Should we kill Bernie? And everybody was in agreement. No, there's no need to, because Bernie's just out for money. Whoever's running the show, he's going to go with them. He don't care about. He has no loyalty to one thing or another. A good guy, but he has no loyalty to one side or the other, one team. But we never, ever, ever thought about, well, have Mark kill him. No way, no how, nothing. We would have never did that, something like that, because we knew his mental state. Lenny was scared, but really had no need to be, because no matter how much talk there was, and there was only this discussions maybe 3, 4, 5 times that it was serious, Pino always said no, we're not going to do that, no. And he was happy with just, there's a new man running the ship, we got our money coming every week to split up, no, we're not killing Lenny. So Lenny really had no chance to get killed. But getting back to Mark, we would have never, ever, ever, ever thought of using Mark to go kill Lenny.
Just a bad idea.
Mark's dangerous. He can be controlled to an extent. One time Sam said to me in the car, we were mad at Jack Italiano about something. We thought because he used to come on scores with us, and we thought that he took some of the loot out. All right? And Sam, when Mark was in the car, he said, hey, watch what you say about Jack, because Mark will go kill him. And I says, yeah, you're right. Just getting mad, he'll go kill him. So Mark was dangerous, and Mark would do what you said, but he was unstable. He was unstable. So me looking out for Mark, hoping his best interest, I'm an impressionable kid. I'm young. I want to make an impression. I want to do something. I remember I wanted to go, I can't remember what, shoot somebody, strangle somebody, whatever, hurt somebody bad because they said something about me, they cheated me, whatever. And I'll never forget this. Joey Naples says to me, Frankie, don't do that. No, don't do that. No, don't do that. I'm not going to let anybody give you a rifle. I'm not going to let anybody give you a gun. No, don't do that. He said, listen, if I went around shooting everybody that stabbed me in the back or cheated me, he goes, it would be a full-time job. That's all I'd be doing. And I thought to myself, wow, this guy's the boss. And there's people stabbing him in the back and cheating him and double-crossing him. He's the boss. And I'll never forget that. Yeah. So I could have been used. I could have been used as Bernie used Mark. Me and my friends could have been used. But Joey, Pino, Sam, especially Pino and Sam, because those were the guys I was with a lot. And there's other older guys whose names really weren't in newspapers and stuff like that, you know. They didn't use me. They could have. So I'm thankful as you look back, I'm thankful that they didn't use me. Because I would have done whatever. Yeah. They could have sent me on suicide missions. I would have done it because I wanted to make an impression. So that's what I'm saying about Mark. Yeah. Mark got used because he was impressionable. He was mesmerized. And Bernie was the bad apple that sent him wrong. I tried to help Mark like these guys could have used me. I could have used Mark in deadly and dangerous and just as a throwaway. I could have used him like that. I didn't. I liked him. After he stabbed me, I liked him. He's my friend. So I tried to help him as these guys reined me in. No, don't do that. No, don't do that. No, don't do that. That's what I did with Mark. Yeah. And I always would think about Joey saying that to me as a young, impressionable kid. No, don't do that. Yeah. And that's what Mark.
That was when I talked to him in the prison, and that moment came up where he acknowledged that he was used.
You're right.
And you could tell, he literally had, the tear in his eye because at the moment where he's come full circle at this point where he now knows.
Right.
Yeah, he was used, and
they didn't care about him. Yeah. I cared about him. Yeah. Just as I got older, I realized these guys cared about me. Yeah. They cared about me. They could have sent me and us guys because we were hardcore guys from Wedgwood. We were rough kids. We did whatever. We did whatever they wanted to do. We would have did. Have done. So, Mark probably realizes that instead of like how I realized they cared about me. Yeah. Mark realizes they didn't care. But again, that's why I want to say Mark, his other side of Mark is unbelievable. I tell people he's one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. And that's kind of what I wanted to say. Yeah. I mean, when I was in the prison, he'd bring my mother flowers for Valentine's Day. He'd do this, he'd do that. I mean, I know people he met, the next day he'd show up, cut their grass for them. Stuff like that. He was one of the nicest people anybody could meet, Yeah. And I worry about Mark. I worry about when he gets out. I'm going to try to help him. I think he'll listen. But I want him to have a good life when he gets out.
Last question for you. When Mark gets out of prison, are you going to be there picking him up?
I doubt it because, I hope his mother's still alive. If she's alive, that's her place to see her son. And when he gets out, he should see his mother. He should have time with his mother and that. Me and my group will be happy when he gets out. Happy for him, happy to see him, and want to see him do good. Want to see him have something in life and enjoy whatever time he has left. Yeah. So pick him up. I doubt that. I hope his mother's still alive. I picked up Orly Carabbia from prison. I think it was 88. I picked him up from Lewisburg. And the funniest part is we brought his toupee in a box, okay? And we go to this restaurant in the Holiday Inn on Interstate 80. We go in the Holiday Inn, and he says, give me the box. I'm going to the bathroom, put my top. So he goes in the bathroom, he comes out, and I'm looking at him, and I'm doing everything not to laugh. His hair was completely white, silver, all the way around here, gray, silver gray, all the way around, and his toupee was jet black. And I'll never forget.
I hope you guys love that story at the end there with the toupee. Fantastic story from Frank there. Johnny, this has been another fantastic episode. Youngstown Mob Talk. We brought some stuff out from the vault.
Mhm.
We're going to have some more stuff coming up that we're going to bring out from the vault.
Yeah.
So I look forward to doing those shows, kind of give people a behind the scenes look and maybe hear some things that they've never known, kind of straighten out the truth a little bit, as we like to call it.
Yeah. We got more guests coming up. So, definitely stay tuned. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel. It really helps us grow. And you can also listen to us anywhere you get podcasts. You can find Youngstown Mob Talk. So check that out. Our Youngstown Mob Tour app is coming soon for iPhone and Android. That's coming.
Yep.
We're almost done with that.
We're just finishing up some proofing and making sure that everything looks good and everything's correct. And we can't wait to get that out to you guys. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe when we get that, once that drops, maybe we do like a mob app party. We get a whole bunch of people meet up together and we'll caravan around town.
Yeah, like a release point. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. So stay tuned for that. Of course, find us on Facebook. We are the Youngstown Mob. We started the group. We're over 31,000 members. So very cool. Also, the Pittsburgh Mob group that Jim started is coming up as well.
Yeah.
And you can always email us at steelvalleysyndicate@gmail.com. And of course, one of the huge shows we did at the Stambaugh Auditorium in Youngstown was detailing the Cavallero bombing from 1962. We were fortunate enough to get Charlie Cavallero's blessing.
Yeah.
Charlie Cavallero Jr. survived this horrible car bombing in 1962 that killed his younger brother, Tommy, and it killed his father, Cadillac Charlie Cavallero.
Yeah.
And the national media had been requesting that story for decades, and Charlie always turned him down. But you know what? He let us help tell that story. So we shot a documentary that we are currently editing as well. That'll be out, maybe next year. And right now, though, you can actually watch the live event that we did in its entirety at a website called viewstub.com/cavbomb, CAVBOMB. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, I mean they can go watch it for less than what a ticket costs. So
yeah,
it's a great deal. So make sure you go check that out.
It's almost 2 hours long, so you'll get your money's worth.
Absolutely.
And you'll it was a powerful night. So something I was very proud of.
And it was nice. It was nice for me and Charlie to sit down because with a lot of the conjecture and rumors from FBI documents and the thoughts around town and people that were around for those times, right? A lot of them associated it with the Naples bombing Cavallero. Now, do we know that for sure? Probably no, but it's one of the more likely episodes.
Yeah,
of what could have happened.
Yeah, we're able to say, from all the research and all the evidence that's out there, that that's the most likely scenario we put together. So it's all detailed in that event. Check that out. Again, viewstub.com/cavbomb. But I think it's about time to wrap it up.
Absolutely.
We got another guest coming up next week. She was speaking of your Uncle Joey. She was actually the first reporter on scene at the crime scene when he was killed.
Yeah.
So check that out. We won't spoil it, but next week or our next episode, we'll have a special guest. So
yeah. So for Youngstown Mob Talk, I'm Jimmy Naples. It's Johnny Chechitelli. We'll see you guys next time. Ciao.
That was an amazing podcast from an amazing podcast company. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like and subscribe buttons and share it with your friends. It goes a long way in helping us produce more amazing content.